Welcome to this very important video. Today we are going to discuss something that was on my mind for quite some time. And that is three types of people, how we can categorize all humans into three types of people. Then that categorization is of extreme importance. Before I get there, why are we doing this? Because, as you know, I have a very high conviction that we are undergoing the most important phase in human history, not just in our lives, but in human history. And that most important phase is the robot revolution. That the AI and robot revolution will create the largest economic vertical, or maybe it's a horizontal, not a vertical, that ever existed. And that is humanoid robots taking over everything and enormously expanding the industry or the economic segment that is human labor today, which is a very large segment. It's 30 trillion a year. Everything humans do will be replaced by humanoid robots, with one exception, of course. I go into that later. And this big revolution is driven by AI breakthroughs, but also humanoid robots as a hardware platform. Now, as you know, I also have a very high conviction that Tesla is the single company that will capture the vast majority of that market for many, many reasons. And that's why we have the channel. That's why we are discussing that. What I'm doing here on my channel is the quantification of three things: of risk, how likely are things to happen, of timelines, when are things going to happen, and of economics, to what extent economically are they going to happen, and how does it reflect in stock prices. That is very important for us, because if we understand that, we can get ahead of the future and capitalize massively on this understanding. Now, back to my initial entry point. There are three types of people in the world. And this revolution and Tesla are so important that they become the defining aspect of what it means to be human. I'm not exaggerating. So here are the three types of people. The first ones are those who don't get it. These people either haven't heard of Tesla, I mean, that's very rare at this point, and haven't heard of Elon Musk, so they are not even in the game. The ones that did, this first category, are the people who don't get it, who either hate Elon and have Elon derangement syndrome, which is very dangerous for them at this point, because they're going to miss out on the future, not just not get rich, but also have enormous problems. Because if you're not a capital owner in the future, you will have an enormous problem because there are no jobs left. So these people argue, oh, Tesla is just a car company. It's all a fraud. He always misses deadlines. They are like emotionally opposed to Elon, emotionally opposed to Tesla. That is a big problem for them. The second group of people are those who get it. You know, many of you guys, and many on YouTube, many Tesla tubers, from Jeff Lutz, right, to Randy Kirk, to Farzad, like all the great guys out there, they really get it. And they understand all the things. They understand Tesla is building a $25 trillion robotics and AI company in the next 5 years. They understand that from there it could grow even bigger. They understand all these things. And then there's group 3, which I count myself in, some of you. And group 3 are the ones that are part of group 2, but who have internalized that new reality so much that their focus goes away from reiterating that reality and goes into the central question: what do we do now? What do we do now that we know that this is going to happen? And of course, the answer is we need to capitalize on it. It's fundamentally important that we capitalize on it, because it's not just about the opportunity of our lifetimes to make enormous amounts of money. It is also an imperative that we do that, because that future that is coming is not just a utopia. That future that is coming sees enormous force multiplication of capital, sees enormous takeover of all human labor by capital, and this magic equation of the economy, right? That economic growth or economic output equates three things: productivity, capital, and labor, will change. It will change, and it never changed before. It will change the central formula of economics to economic output equals technology multiplied with capital. Labor will be gone. There is no such thing anymore as labor. And that will happen in the next 5 years. People think it's going to happen in 100 years. That is incorrect. It's going to happen in the next 5 years, which will lead to a dramatic bifurcation of society. Very dramatic. If you think you have seen anything bad so far with trillionaires versus 50% of the population not having whatever, $1,000 in their savings account, this is just the beginning. It's going to be vastly worse. By the way, I'm not promoting any of these things. My job is to predict accurately what's going to happen. And this is going to happen, and it's going to happen right now. So it becomes of essential importance that we understand how we make money. And the only way to really make outsized returns, besides having some internal hack with your Silicon Valley bros or something, but people who are not connected with some kind of tribe who has kind of an unfair advantage in some subset of things, the best way is by joining the central economic multiplication force, which is Tesla. There are some other companies who also will participate massively in this upside, the Mag 7. Even companies I don't like Meta, will be very successful because they're smart. Here will be great. But Tesla, in my assessment, is just the central eye of the storm, the central driving force of this. So the smartest way we can do is learn how to allocate capital effectively and become very good at that. And group 3, what is the difference between group 3 and group 2? I observe that as someone who publishes a video on YouTube, has all these discussions with a lot of smart people on X. I really see that great people talk too much, in my opinion, about fundamentals of Tesla. It is important that we have these guys, and I'm always observing it. I have my models, I observe all that stuff. But at some point we understand, okay, fine, we get it. There is no doubt that this is going to happen. We can keep observing it, but we need to evolve in our brains. If that is a given and we understand this trajectory, we need to really translate it into the central question. What does it mean for us? And how do we win? And that is a whole different additional discipline. It doesn't mean what group 2 is doing is dumb. It's smart, but it's not the full puzzle. Understanding Tesla is one thing. We need to understand additional things now that we operationalize this for a trading and investment strategy. So number 1, there are certain evolutions you go through in group 3. The first evolution is, I should have a significant chunk of my portfolio in Tesla, let's say 20%. And my financial advisor says, don't do that. By the way, nothing I'm saying here is financial advice. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing people going through. So I'm not telling you to do anything. You need to make up your own mind. But the first step is like, I need 20% Tesla. Financial advisor says, that's too much exposure. The next evolution step is like, wait, why 20%? I need 50% because Tesla is a diversified super juggernaut across robots, electric vehicles, blah, 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 you know the whole thing. And so on and so forth. So you're ending up at some point, I need 100% of my portfolio in Tesla. Okay. That is the first evolutionary stage in group 3. Then the next stage is, wait a moment. If we live through a time in history where something so incredible is happening, and this thing is so safe, so clear that it's going to happen, and it's not a little startup doing that, it's a $30 billion in cash sitting there and making $100 billion in revenue, mega infrastructure that is already highly diversified. So the risk is very little. Shouldn't we be a little more aggressive than having 100% of our portfolio in Tesla? I believe, yes, I am more aggressive. Because when you run the math on these things, at some point it becomes clear, this is definitely going to happen. And there's enormous alpha that we have as group 3 because we understand this much better than the Wall Street normies, for example. What can we do that makes us much more alpha than just having 100% in Tesla and hold the stock? For example, if you start trading intelligently around a core position, you're going to make, instead of making an average 90% a year, which is my projection, if you just hold, you make 90% roughly projected in my model until 2030. Of course, you could make 200% or 300% or 400%. I think it becomes a little sketchy up there. If you aim at 300%, the probability of a wipeout becomes very high. But let's say 200% should be easily possible with a little bit of skill. And now the difference between group 2 and group 3 is, I know a lot of group 2ers, right? The group 2 are the people you meet. They're very smart. They understand everything I'm saying. They say, I get it. Tesla is huge. I'm totally all in Tesla. But I don't want to get involved in group 3 stuff. That's just too exhausting. I want to sleep at night. I want to sit on my money and see it, 30-fold by 2030, and I will be happy. I get that attitude, and maybe I get there too at some point mentally. But right now I see this is just crazy what's happening. It's just an unbelievable opportunity. So group 3, what we are trying to do here is, first of all, in our group where we think about these things, I think a lot of you guys are also group 2 and want to stay there, which is totally fine, right? We are all on the same page. The group 3 The risk here is that you go all out, you start options trading, and there are lots of technical traps. You get trapped and killed, right? That can definitely happen. So we need to be cautious. But I think these are the three groups we're looking at. Group 2 also makes the kind of a mistake, in my opinion, by talking too much with Group 1, right? Group 2, the people who understand Tesla, they are engaged in all these Group 1 discussions, like with what's his name, Gary Black, for example, or some Wall Street normies who don't get it, and they have, they're like little children intellectually who have to have this explained, like, oh, look, there are robots, like, oh, but the robots, they might not come, like, oh, your portfolio can never have more than 5% of any stock in there. It's like, what are you talking about? This is really dumb. And normally in Group 3, we don't talk to Group 1 because there is no benefit. We cannot learn anything. There is no benefit. And I think we shouldn't look down. We should look, if you're Group 2, you should rather talk to Group 3 and figure out maybe there is something here where I can incrementally increase my returns through an alpha churn strategy or alpha attack strategies with options. Then wasting time with Group 1. Group 1 is just totally lost. Why am I saying all these things? We're entering this new phase now. After this earnings call on Wednesday this week, it has become very clear to me that my timelines are correct, which is fine. But what's more important, my risk that these timelines are incorrect is now down significantly. So I predicted all the things that Elon said. I said this is my likely trajectory, but I put a certain risk on it. Now I'm totally confirmed because Elon is absolutely doubling down, and these timelines are now not next year, they're this year. If Elon says June is robotaxi launch, and now it's February or late January, the probability that Elon is wrong becomes incrementally lower and lower the closer that date comes, because for obvious reasons. So this is very confirmed. And he also mentioned a lot of things about Optimus. He also confirmed that Optimus is very likely ahead of schedule, which I already pointed out that this is more likely than not. But he confirmed that again. So in other words, the game has started now. 2025 is the transformative moment. If you want to enter into Group 3 thinking, okay, now's the time to really enter the game and really be on top of it. And in Group 3, you also go through this transformation where if you have a job, for example, if you have any significant amount of capital, if you have $500,000 or something in Tesla, when you do the math, 90% base return on $500,000 is already $450,000. Are you really getting paid $450,000 a year in your job? Maybe you are, but not a lot of you are. And very few of you are getting paid more than $450,000 a year. Your base return alone on $500,000 Tesla is higher than nearly everyone's job pays. Now, if you add alpha, if you can double that, thinking about these things, focusing on it, having the dialogue with us and interacting and putting your brain to work in our group, for example, is going to make you another 450,000 if you do it right. Of course, there's risk. That's why you have to pay a lot of attention and really use your brain and really train yourself. But, that is the question you have to ask. Because some people say, oh, I'm busy, I have a job, I have to do this and that. Well, we have to grow up and understand we live in a new timeline and a new time. And a lot of you guys have way more than $500,000 in Tesla. So, at this point, we are reaching this point in time where you have to go through this inner evolution. Like, if this is all true, what we are saying here, you have arrived at the same conclusion as me. And we understand this is happening. This is the biggest thing that has ever happened. We get a 90% base return on equity per year. Now with alpha, we can double or triple this thing. I tell you one thing, this is a full-time job. It's worth our time. That's the conclusion I came to. It is worth our time because there is probably nothing in the world where you can deploy your capital and get a higher ROI, or where you can deploy your brain and your time and your focus and get a higher return. Just do the math. So it's a question of conviction. If you have conviction in Tesla, you understand the returns. If you have conviction in your own capabilities, or even your interest in learning about trading and all these things to trade around your core position, I can just tell you, I made this decision because I did the math. And the math is, for myself, I do not see any use of my skill, my brain, or my capital where I can get a higher return than Tesla. The more I focus on that, the more I make. And we will need this money. We will need this money. Mark my words. We will need this money. This is not about luxury. This is about survival. if you are not a significant player with capital in the future, you will get wiped out. I am absolutely certain about that. The future that is coming has significant downsides for humans. There is no way around that. But that's only true for humans who don't have capital. For the others, it has unlimited upside. It's very sad, but that's the reality. And if you feel for the people with no money, I tell you the only way to help them is that you have a lot of money. So let's get on it. That's why we're building the group. I leave the link in the description. And I mention this all the time. There is no fee or anything here. My job is not to make money off you guys. My job is to find the smartest people who share these convictions. That's also why I'm sharing this video. I do not believe in group one. I think our job is not to convince group one. The job of group one is to use their brains and finally transition into group two. And if you're in group two, I can only recommend to think about group three cautiously, right? So I'm doing this whole channel, this whole operation, because I believe we need capital under our control. We need to peer up and join forces to really understand how we build that new future. There's also enormous, enormous upside for us getting together and acting together. It's the old rule with humans, especially in critical times. You need good friends, and these friends need to be capable, and they also need to bring something to the table. And then together we will be much, much stronger. And I tell you one thing, we will need that strength. We will need the strength. The future is going to be very interesting. And you know that's an ancient Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times, and our times are the most interesting in history. So I hope that was helpful. We'll keep you up to date. There's much more coming. Sign up to the group, follow the application process. Otherwise, I can't let you in. And then we go from there. See you then.